Hi, my name is Lou Mignani and I live in Wells, Vermont. This video is an attempt to develop some interest in passing legislation to regulate the slate industry. My town is in what's called the Slate Valley, a strip of land that runs along the New York border in southwestern Vermont. The valley on our side of the border runs from about West Paula to Fairhaven and includes Wells, Poultney, and Castleton. On the New York side, it runs from about South Granville to Hampton. And a look at a map of the Slate Valley in the early 1900s would show you about an equal number of active quarries on either side of the border, and that's no longer the case today. In the early 70s, most of the quarries had been abandoned. The business got better in the 80s, and opening new quarries had become problematic. Because New York had their land reclamation law of 1975 and Vermont had Act 250 in place. Then the Vermont legislature passed bills between 93 and 95 that would allow people to register existing quarry pits that could be opened and expanded without giving neighbors the recourse to Act 250 hearings. So until the end of 1996, people could register quarries, and I opposed one such registration by Northeast developers. But I was late. The legislation had already become law, and I saw my neighbor register 5 quarry holes, one of which was honestly no bigger than a good-sized hot tub. I recently counted the quarries that were registered in this period, and there are over 400 of them. Many, if not most, are on hand-drawn maps, not surveys, leaving neighbors to wonder if there is agreement on our boundaries. And all these registered pits can be opened and expanded to their neighbors' borders. The majority of what's taken from a slate quarry is unsuitable for finished product, so it's piled up and results in massive rubble piles. And they can also go right up to the neighbors' borders. So it's illegal to find one of your property boundaries being an open pit or a pile of rubble. If you're unfamiliar with this area, it would be a difficult thing for you to appreciate the effect that this lack of legislation has had on the people and the environment. The people generally feel the industry is untouchable and don't say anything about it. Many are afraid. Last summer, as a new quarry was opening up near my property line, I used Google Earth to do a flyover and was shocked by what I saw. So it prompted me to try and do something about it. I tried contacting a member of the House Natural Resources Committee, but that went nowhere. So now I'm asking for help from anyone else on the committee or any interested parties who feel as I do about what's happening to this area. When I did the Google Earth flyover, I was amazed by the concentration of new quarrying activity on the Vermont side and the distinct lack of it on the New York side. Looking up the New York regulations, I got my answer. New York's law covers all mining operations, regardless of when they were started. It's comprehensive and requires a plan that includes land reclamation, which must be done concurrently with extraction. Now, to give you a feel for what's legal on our side of the border and normal, I'd like to show you a few pictures I took and follow that with some Google Earth pictures of the area. This is a picture of Bullfrog Hollow Brook. I forget how much of a wetland there was before the rubble pile was laid down, and it really doesn't matter. The point being that there is no oversight, nobody telling a quarry owner where they can and can't pile rubble, what defines a wetland, and so on. The next picture demonstrates what a person's backyard can look like if it borders a slate quarry. I don't know the specifics of this property and don't think it matters. A rubble pile or a pit can come right up to your border. This is a picture of some refuse in the process of being buried by rubble. The point being, everything goes here, and there is nobody overseeing what takes place. This is the first of some Google Earth pictures that start at West Paula, which you can see at the bottom center of the picture. The white line in the center is the New York-Vermont border, and I'll try to keep that in the pictures that follow. You can see the newest slate quarrying activity is a kind of bluish gray. These are newer piles of rubble and or active pits. The next picture is north of the previous one, and I'll just keep scooting north as we go here. This is just south of Granville, New York. Again, you can see almost continuous quarrying activity on the Vermont side and very little on the New York side. The third picture centers on the boundary between West Paulet and Wells. The quarry on both sides of Route 149 is one of the few quarries visible from a main road in Vermont. It's Newmont Slate, and one of the few companies I've seen that seems to be making every effort to do an aesthetically decent job. But what you see being done at Newmont is not the norm. The next picture going north shows land in Wells, just north of Route 149. Continuing north, this picture includes Wells and South Pulteney. Lake St. Catherine is on the right, and the rubble piles aren't yet visible from lake houses, but they're going to become so if this is allowed to continue. The last picture is just below Fairhaven. You can see the New York border meandering along the Pulteney River and all the quarries east of 22A and south of Route 4 and west of Route 30. You would see almost none of this from any major highway, which is probably why so few people know what's going on in this area. In preparing this, I reread the intent of Act 250, the purpose of which is to prevent the unplanned, uncoordinated, and uncontrolled use of the lands, which may be destructive to the environment and which are not suitable to the demands and needs of the people." End quote. I don't know anyone in our legislature can make a case that the slate quarry exemption has proven consistent with the stated purpose of Act 250, and I'm asking that this be remedied. What I think is required is legislation directed specifically at the industry, as was done in New York. Some main points taken from the New York law that I think would satisfy the goals of Act 250 would require a mining plan on a survey map, mandatory setbacks from property lines, roads, and wetlands, a gradient no greater than 33% on all the rubble piles, the tops of which should be graded and covered with materials suitable to sustain regeneration of vegetative growth. A requirement that abandoned pits should be permanently and clearly marked and obstructed so as to prevent accidents and deter the use of these pits as dumps. A requirement that reclamation should be an ongoing process, consistent with the mining plan, and that monies should be escrowed sufficient to finish such reclamation when mining ends. And an application fee should be imposed on the mining company in order to cover the cost to the state of hiring staff to oversee and assist in the application, operation, and reclamation of the quarries. In the absence of any new legislation, what has been happening mostly impacts us, the owners of property adjacent to the pits. Our property values and quality of life decline. More and more land will become available to the slate industry, and they will continue to prosper at our expense. But with or without new legislation, this boom is going to bust like it has before. And the current mess being created will be left for another generation to deal with. I thank you very much for listening to this, and hope something will be done about it.